Hello students, my name is Dr. Guru Prasad Ramakrishna Naik, Assistant Professor in Economics from Government College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Sangalim, Goa. This is a part of e-content development for the subject of economics initiated by the Directorate of Higher Education, Government of Goa. So today's my topic, the module name is Consumers Equilibrium, Necessary and Sufficient Condition. This is a part of Unit 1, Demand and Consumer Behavior, module number 12. So this paper code is CC3 Microeconomics. So basically the outline of this module is that first we will deal with the concept of budget line, next we are going to the concept of what is called as consumers equilibrium, and third we will know what are the necessary and sufficient conditions required for the consumers equilibrium. Now at the end of this module, the learner is expected to understand the concept of budget line, describe the concept of what is consumers equilibrium, and interpret the necessary and sufficient conditions required for consumers equilibrium. Now coming straight to the first part, concept of a budget line. A budget line is nothing but a graphical presentation of all the combinations of two goods that a consumer can purchase given his or her income and the prices of two goods. Now here we are stressing on income because budget line is also called as price line or income line. So based on the budget, how much the consumer can buy depends on this income. Similarly, it also depends on the prices of goods, because in the end the consumer calculates so and so is the price of the commodity, and based on that what is my income, I will buy so many units of so and so goods. Second, the purchases are to be done in such a way that the cost of all combinations must equal the money income of the consumer or the budget of the consumer. Now let us say if I have rupees 100, that will be my budget or my money income, and if I want to buy, let us say, goods from the market, there are let us say two goods available to me, good X and good Y. So I will first look at the price of good X. If the price of good X is rupees 10 and I decide to buy 5 quantities of that, so price multiplied by quantity, 10 into 5 will become 50. So out of my budget of 100 rupees, 50 rupees I will have consumed on purchase of good X. Now if I look at commodity Y, the price of commodity Y is say rupees 5, I decide to buy 10 units of that commodity. So again price multiplied by quantity of the commodity, 5 into 10, 50. So I have spent my entire income of 100 rupees on both good X and good Y. So there are innumerable combinations of these commodities. The main point here is that consumer must utilize his entire income on the purchase of these two commodities. Next we come to the equation of the budget line. As you can see on the slide, the equation for the budget line is M is equal to Qx into Px plus Qy into Py. Now here M stands for the budget or the income that the consumer has with him. The Qx refers to the quantity of commodity X that the consumer purchases. Similarly, Qy refers to the quantities of commodity Y that the consumer can purchase, and Px stands for the price of commodity X, and similarly Py stands for the price of commodity Y. Now this equation gives us a budget line. Now as you can see on this diagram, we have represented the units of good X on X axis and units of good Y on the Y axis. Now there is a line joining both these axes. That line which you can see in this diagram is AB, which is nothing but the budget line, and on the Y axis you can see the slope of the budget line M by Py, that stands for income divided by price of commodity Y. So this point A suggests that consumer is spending the entire income buying just commodity Y and nothing of commodity X. On the other extreme you see point B, on the budget line on the x axis, the M by Px. M again here stands for the budget or income of the consumer by price of commodity or good X. So, point B suggests that the consumer is buying entire product X and nothing of product Y. So, this budget line shows the different combination. These are just 2 points A and B. You can have innumerable points in between showing different combinations of two goods. Next, we come to the slope of the budget line. As you can see in this equation, delta stands for a change. So, any change in commodity Y, that is delta Y, is equal to the budget or the income of the consumer, that is M, divided by Py, that is price of the commodity Y, is equal to price of Y, that is relative price of good Y. Similarly, we have delta X stands for change in the commodity X, which is dependent on the money available with the consumer, that is M, divided by Px, that is price of commodity X, which relatively is the price of good X denoted by Px. So, here Py by Px refers to the relative prices of good Y and good X respectively. Next, we come to the concept of consumer's equilibrium. Now, the consumer is said to be in equilibrium when consumer maximizes the utility given budget or income. In other simple words, if I want to say this, I can say that consumer will be in equilibrium when both the budget line and the indifference curve are tangent to each other. Now, before we go to actually how consumer's equilibrium takes place, we need to understand what are the assumptions of consumer's equilibrium. First, we assume that the prices of two goods are given and are constant, meaning price of good X and price of good Y is given and they are both constant, they do not change. Second, we assume that the income of the consumer remains the same, because if there are any changes in the income of the consumer, then it would complicate the calculation. So, therefore, we assume that income of the consumer remains the same. Third, we also assume that taste and preference of the consumer remains same. Consumer is only interested in buying commodity X and Y. Next, we assume that consumer is rational. Now, what do we mean by consumer is rational? A rational consumer means that consumer wants to maximize his satisfaction. In previous modules, we might have studied indifference curves. So, consumer moves from one indifference curve to another indifference curve because the consumer is interested in maximizing its satisfaction. The same concept we are using here of rationality. So, therefore, we assume that consumer is rational. Next, we assume that the two goods, that is the good X and good Y that we have taken, should be homogeneous and divisible. And the last assumption is that there should be perfect competition in the market. Now, we come to the concept of consumer's equilibrium. As you can see in this diagram, I have represented units of good X on X axis and units of good Y on Y axis. Now, there is an indifference map which you can see in this diagram. You have 4 indifference curves, IC1 that is indifference curve 1, IC2 that is indifference curve 2, IC3 that is indifference curve 3 and IC4 that is indifference curve 4. Now, I am superimposing budget line AB on this diagram. Now, as you can see, out of the 4 indifference curves, the budget line AB is a tangent to indifference curve 3, IC3. Now, consumer has the option to be either on IC1, IC2, IC3 or IC4. Now, if the consumer lies on indifference curve 1, indifference curve 1 intersects the budget line at 2 points C and D, but consumer cannot be in equilibrium because that is lower level of satisfaction. So, he considers next indifference curve that gives him higher level of satisfaction, indifference curve 2. But here also there are 2 points, point F and point G, but still this indifference curve is also not tangent to the budget line. So, the consumer moves to the next higher indifference curve IC3. Now, this indifference curve is tangent to the budget line at point E. So, therefore, IC3, the indifference curve which is tangent to the budget line AB, at point E, consumer achieves equilibrium at point E, where unit of good X is optimum at X star and units of good Y is optimum at Y star. Now, below the budget line, if the consumer cannot achieve higher level of satisfaction, because IC1 and IC2 are less than IC3, and consumer similarly cannot move to IC4 because that is outside his budget. Then we come to the conditions of consumer's equilibrium. Now, basically for the equilibrium to take place, three conditions should be satisfied. First, the budget line should be tangent to the indifference curve, as we have just now seen in the diagram. Budget line AB was tangent to indifference curve 3 IC3 at point E. So, that is the first condition that should be met. Second, at equilibrium point, slope of the budget line should equal the slope of the indifference curve, that is marginal rate of substitution of X and Y should equal price of X by price of Y. And the third and the last condition, the indifference curve should be convex to the origin. To summarize, under indifference curve analysis, a consumer is said to achieve equilibrium when he achieves maximum level of satisfaction, which is given on the indifference curve, within his budget or money income, which is shown by the budget line. You can have a look at the references. Thank you.